Okay. Bakari is very intelligent. He's very eloquent. Brother, I am so thankful that he was willing to come on and talk with you, and he wants to come back and continue to have these conversations. Because bottom line, regardless of which of the major candidates we're supporting, he's absolutely right. I mean, there is work to be done, and it's so wild. He mentioned Denmark, South Carolina. That's actually where my mom's family's from. I've never been there, but now I'm like interested in going on a drive with her to go see like where her mom and her grandparents stuff lived at and stuff. But he's absolutely right for these conversations. And I think that we'll find that once we get past the two campaigns themselves, there are a lot of us who understand that we have work that we need to do on the community level, on the local level. I mean, our parties across the board, especially when we're talking about being here in the South, they've not necessarily stood up for us the way they need to, and we haven't had certain candidates. Maybe there are more progressive or more candidates out there who want to work hard for the community, but we haven't had their back in terms of being that solid go-to voting block. I know I see Stacy is in this chat room tonight, and I mean I've learned so much from talking with Stacy too about just like how you grow movements and really get stuff done. People have to be willing to go over to city council meetings. People have to be willing to go over to the courthouse, to the Capitol. You know what I'm saying? So I definitely appreciate his perspective. Yeah. I do think that some of his talking points, like I appreciate his perspective. I appreciate his willingness, because there are a lot of people who would not be willing or would not have been able to have that conversation, right? We both have had this experience with people who support Hillary Clinton. My worst experience, of course, was when I did that Canadian morning show with the woman that was yelling at me, right? Like about how I owed her. Yeah. So I really do think that having someone, be able to articulate. Now, whether we agreed with his points room or not is a totally different story. Right. But I definitely think that, having him able, and I even though the conversation wasn't about Hillary, but it was more about like the soul of the party and just like general policy issues. I like that, because I think we need more honest dialogue and conversation about the direction we're going for. So it's great that he wants to do more, follow up.
I appreciated the willingness of someone who says, number one, okay, let's start at the top. A lot of people, and we said this offline, Bakari, and we meant to say this online, but we didn't. He told me offline, and he was going to say it online, that he is not a paid surrogate of Hillary Clinton. He is just he's made a choice to support Hillary Clinton. Now,
and I can respect that.
I thought he was a paid surrogate for the longest. Like, I thought this brother was getting paid. Like, why would you support Hillary Clinton if you're not getting paid to support Hillary Clinton? Mm-hmm. And but he's made his case, and I respect that. I disagree with him. I think he's wrong on some of those things, but that's kind of besides the point at this point, because I think what we have to realize is that he said something key that I think. I have to apply it in reverse. I'm thinking a lot of thinking right here. He said that when he was on the state level, there was no one there. There's no infrastructure to help him in the manner that he needed. And likewise, I'm thinking as we're building this infrastructure to help people on the state level, we need to make sure that we have the relationships necessary to, to build these bonds with people who are not completely sold out to the establishment. Like some of the things he said tonight, he could not have said if he was a paid surrogate of Hillary Clinton.
No, I agree. And that's why I think that's what I said. I appreciate. And when you said, like, I haven't heard you said some of the stuff, I wish he would say some of these things on CNN, because I think we need to, I think that's the problem. People are so busy trying to, people are so busy trying to paint Hillary as this infallible candidate, which is, she's human, right?
He didn't do that tonight.
No, he did it. And that's what that's what I'm saying. Like, I appreciate it. And I know some folks in the chat room were not happy with him, but I don't need someone to be perfectly in alignment to be able to work with them on what needs to be done. Yeah. Now, however, as we were chatting about before I came on, like there were some points and there are the regular talking points that come out. But I think when you really start to push Hillary surrogates on certain things, their arguments aren't as strong. And I'm sure they feel the same way about us, but that's why you have people like me, you, we have Stacy in the chat room, we have the rest of the Progressive Army who can effectively discuss all things Sanders in a very conversant manner so that we can withstand whatever challenges are pushed back. And I don't think that Hillary's secretary gets necessarily, because the comment about the one thing that she did to help in terms of poverty, right, was about children and was about the CHIP program, which back in 2008 when she ran, there was some debate about whether or not she even had as big as a role as she said or whatever. I mean, okay, fine. But my thing though is, as first lady, you taking on a project under your husband who's the president, you being basically given something to do versus earning that or working hard, to get that. Not that she didn't work hard once she was given that task. I mean, we see the things that Michelle has done, first ladies work very hard, but it's very different than, really spearheading a movement or something on your own. But at the same time, it's very disingenuous for me when people use CHIP as this great example of something that she's done to lift children out of poverty. How do you lift children out of poverty when you plunge their parents right back into it or further into it? Because with welfare reform, which was championed, and yes, there were jobs created in the 90s and some people got off the rolls, but when the tech bubble busted and those jobs went away, people were right back, but they were in a worse position because the nature of the system had completely changed. The work requirement for food stamps completely changed things as well. So you have people who used to get cash assistance who are no longer getting cash assistance. You have a work requirement for food stamps, or people who are no longer eligible for food stamps. So that actually, even though kids can now get CHIP, so kids can have medical care, that's great. But what am I supposed to feed my kids? Right. And if there's not a job for me, or if I don't have the training or whatever, what am I supposed to do and how am I supposed to take care of them? So I really do. I definitely agree and understand. Like when I went through law school and my kids, my kids benefited from having, because I just had crappy student health insurance. So my kids benefited from a CHIP type program in West Virginia when I was in law school. So yeah, that's definitely a great thing. But when you're talking about families as a whole, right? I mean, you have children who suffer when their parents are broke. I mean, that's just a part of life. So great, I can take you to the doctor, but I can't feed you. I mean, great, you can get shots, but I can't clothe you. We don't have a place to live. When you also look at cuts and the way under the Clinton administration, the Hope 6 project decimated public housing. I mean, you have all these really serious issues that we can say, and then that's when they say, oh, but she wasn't president, blah, blah, blah. Okay. As we always say, you cannot take the good without the bad. So either you own all of it, and she's trying to run on her husband's record to some extent too, because she often says, well, there was a good economy the last time Clinton was in the office. Well, that was Bill Clinton. That wasn't you. That was a very different set of factors at work. There were different things that were favorable. So that they're like fact checking people seriously, because there are fact checks that like some of it was Bill and his policies, but some of it was just dumb luck. He just benefited from the times and the system that was. The tech bubble was not him. The Clinton administration, exactly. The tech bubble was not him. They benefited from it and it rolled it out. But at the same time, some of the things that were put in place that made the economy so great in the 90s directly led to the crash we had in 2007, 2008. So, I mean, so I have problems with that stuff or whatever. And when we say like these lofty ideas and goals, again, like Bernie Sanders says, everybody says, oh, well, we're not Denmark. Okay, France, Britain, Germany, Canada. Yeah. I mean, Germany is now offering American students free tuition. So
let's unpack. Let's unpack, and then I'm gonna let you talk so I can go over here and grab this wine bottle. Let's unpack some of what he was saying, because here's the thing: when you get him off of CNN and you listen to his positions, he has a very sober position on who Hillary Clinton is, and yet he still is making this decision to support her. I disagree with that, but it's almost as though he understands, and I'm saying, I want to say they, because I think that there are some people, and maybe I'm giving them too much credit, but perhaps they understand that there is a problem. They just aren't willing to make that leap to say, I'm going to be on the underdog team to fix that problem.
Well, I also think that's like kind of like the difference in the upbringing too, right? Like, okay, even though you might have grown up around like a certain environment but at the same time, you are not necessarily directly a product of that environment in the same way. Like, you know, he's a child of the civil rights movement. I'm a child of the Black Power movement. I mean, my stepfather is a former Black Panther, former political prisoner of the U.S. justice system. My father and my mother, while a little bit younger, were also very nationalistic when in the 70s. And my dad has a story that he always tells. My dad got a full ride to Howard. My dad from Brooklyn, another Brooklyn boy, just like Bernie. My dad's from Brooklyn. My dad grew up in the projects. But his father, we guess, only had an 8th grade education. His mother did graduate from high school, but they were both children of Caribbean immigrants. So my dad grew up in the projects, would have been the first in our family to go to college. My dad had a full ride. They were getting kind of radical their senior year, and his full ride at Howard magically turned into a partial scholarship. This story my dad always tells.
Wow.
And because of things that happened in the 70s, you know, because of what we know about COINTELPRO and other stuff, I don't really doubt my dad's story. And, you know, considering the elitism, you know, of some of our HBCUs, I don't doubt it. But, you know, he still sucked it up, went on his partial scholarship to Howard. He was there 5 days. Again, my dad is a kid from the projects in Brooklyn. That's what he knew. To be there around middle-class Blacks, you know, people who come from college backgrounds, it was a complete different experience. You know, he's growing up in a certain environment. He's living and working and breathing in a certain environment. It was completely different. And he packed his bags and went back home and just worked because it wasn't for him. So and my parents have always been committed to struggle, fighting and dealing with addressing struggle, whether it's dealing with the prison industrial complex. So it's a very different. So when people can say, well, I'm a child of the civil rights movement, and I'm sure that your parents are wonderful people and they have done great work, but I think we all have a different perspective when we talk about struggle and moving forward. Like, you know, we talk about, like I said, I'm a child of Black nationalists. So,
I want to tie it in a little bit more for our audience, because our audience isn't necessarily all.
No, they're not.
Listen, my audience, all of my white listeners.
It's a diverse group of people.
You guys, we have a diverse group, and you guys get you get some inside Black politics that you won't get anywhere else. Like I even slipped up I couldn't believe myself. I slipped up last night and said the N-word in front of all these white guests.
You said Negro.
Negro. Okay, I did get away.
You didn't say Negro. You were drinking. You don't remember. You said Negro last night. You didn't say the other one.
The thing I wanted to tie into that is that there is, and I was listening to a conversation by my homegirl Yvette Carnell from Breaking Brown. There are some natural alliances that never form because of race and racism.
Yep.
There are some natural alliances between Black and white and other, Hispanic, Asian, whatever, middle class and poor, particularly poor, impoverished people. We have more in common with them economically than we do with our own Black middle class. The Black middle class has a different, and the Black upper class, most definitely, has a different experience in America than a white person in poverty.
Well, especially when you're talking about not the new Black upper class, right? When you're talking about folks who come from generations of people who are professionals, generations of Black professionals in college. And again, this is no diss to anybody. That's a beautiful, wonderful thing to be proud of, but it's a different perspective. And we can't act as if just because you may have gone to school with certain people, that you have that same understanding, foundation, and background. Like, it's not the same. Just because, let's be real about the civil rights movement too. The modern civil rights movement that we all learn about and that was heavily embraced socially was a very middle class driven movement. The fact that the jobs and economic part kind of falls to the wayside when we retell history and we coming out of this push for integration, there was no solid economic agenda. We're talking about we want to integrate our schools and stuff, but what happens to our teachers and our administrators? We want to be able to go shop at the department store downtown, but what happens to our businesses in our community? Like, there's no plan to address any of that stuff.
Go ahead. Go listen.
No.
Hang on. You have so many brilliant things to say. You really do.
Well, I was homeschooled till I was like 10, so I kind of put that on my dad because he made me read a lot.
But I feel like I'm cutting you off, but you
No,
on
you're
my show.
fine. Yeah, it is your show.
My
It's
show.
a min
So,
cat thing. Okay, here we're gonna start. We're gonna start making like blurred references, and you guys can tweet us and let us know if you know it. So I'm gonna say it's a mentat thing. Who knows what a mentat is?
you got me. You got me on that one. Yeah. So this is what I wanted to say now. God damn it, it's not. Oh, excuse me, Lord. I'm sorry. Gosh darn it. I lost my train of thought. But you were saying in terms of, say the last thing you just said, Anoa.
Well, I was just saying that it's a difference in frame of reference. Like, you know, when we look at the civil rights movement, right? The civil rights movement, because the civil rights movement also was very different when it was in the South versus it was in the North, right? With the exception of like, you know, which was a little predate when we talk about the modern civil rights movement from like 55 to 65, 57, 60 to 65. But when we're looking at I'm adding on some other stuff now.
No. I'm gonna cut you off. I'm gonna cut you off because I want to, because I know it's Patrick from Flint. What's going on?